the eighth labor of Heracles was to bring back the mares of Diomedes. Diomedes, the king of Thrace and son of Ares and Cyrene, fed his horses human flesh. This drove the horses mad, making them wild. Heracles captured the beast with the help of his young companion Abderos, and left the horses with him while he chased down Diomedes. In Heracles' absence, the crazed horses ate the young boy. Seeking revenge, Heracles then fed Diomedes to the horses, and founded the city of Abdera nearby in his friend's honor. When Eurystheus received the horses, he dedicated them to Hera. Eurystheus. I really like this armor. I think I finally found one to replace the Heroes of Greece with.
Ah, Alexios! What you doing over there, buddy?
Exploring Macedonia.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Alexandros? Show me Alexander.
He's not alive yet.
Where is he?
I don't know.
Give me his nose.
What?
What's your name right now?
Wood needed. In providing for their fleet and for the public building program, the main problem the Athenians faced was finding timber of first-class quality, and particularly timber of long lengths. From the late 5th century BCE at least, and throughout the 4th century, there is ample evidence that Athens relied primarily on Macedonia for her ship timber. As for the timber needed for housing, the rich, who were more concerned with quality, possibly preferred the greater variety and finer quality materials available from Macedonia, Italy, or Asia Minor. In addition, what Attica was unable to supply could probably have been bought in Euboea. Wood definitely needed. This looks nice. Macedonia's banner features the head of a horse. In northern Greece, especially in Thessaly and Macedonia, horse breeding was an important activity and a major source of wealth. When Macedonia increased its power under King Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great, horses played a crucial role in the army. Companion cavalry, the elite cavalry of the Macedonians, has been regarded as the best of the ancient world. The inspiration of the banner came from a coin from Pharsalos in Thessaly, depicting an artistic rendering of a horse's head. Horses are very common in iconography, especially on coinage. It looks kind of like a unicorn at first glance. Yeah, it's the ears.
Give me Alexander. Give him to me. He will not hide from me. Yo, what you doing over there, bro? Zip lining on air alone?
I was on a rope.
No, but you usually use your spear to grip the rope?
Was I not using my spear?
No, there was nothing. You were holding on to nothing as it was sliding across.
Glitch in the game, 0 out of 10. This game sucks.
Kirby's talking to
Leonidas.
Spears. Heck yeah.
Hoplites mainly fought using spears. Called dori in ancient Greek, the spear was a wooden shaft with a length of up to 3 meters. It was probably made from the wood of ash trees, since the trees provided strong material that was also light enough to be handled with ease. The spearhead and butt were manufactured in metal workshops. The spearhead was usually made of iron, but could also be made of bronze, and was fixed to the slender end of the wooden shaft with pitch or nails. The spear butt allowed the weapon to be planted in the ground when not being used. It's possible that the spear butt could also have served as a spare head, but there's little evidence to support this theory. The spear also had a hand grip, which may have been made of leather.
How did I use spears? That's the lay post.
Those shields need buffering.
Yes, they do.
Hoplites were heavily armored infantrymen. The most important piece of equipment was arguably the aspis, a round shield large enough to protect both its wearer and the man to the left of him. The aspis was light and could effectively parry spear and sword thrusts. However, according to its depiction on ancient vases, it was ineffective against javelins and arrows. Hoplite helmets were simply designed to be light, but they could endure direct blows and offered a reasonable amount of protection. There were also many varieties of helmet, but the most widespread seems to have been the Corinthian helmet. Made of a single sheet of bronze that covered most of the head and neck, the Corinthian helmet offered only a small T-shaped opening at the front to allow soldiers to see and breathe. Because the helmet was closed in on itself, it most likely impaired the sight and hearing of the soldiers who wore it. Helmets could also be adorned with crests of dyed horsehair to make the hoplites wearing them look more imposing.
So, the helmet you're wearing.
Yeah, I guess so. Panoply. A hoplite's equipment consisted of a bronze cuirass, or light armor, bronze greaves, a spear, and a sword. Although the comic playwright Aristophanes was probably exaggerating when he wrote that crafted armor cost 1,000 drachmae, about 10 times the monthly wages of a skilled craftsman, the bronze muscle cuirass was one of the costliest pieces of a hoplite's equipment. As such, only the wealthiest individuals could afford it. A soldier's body armor could be completed by a pair of greaves to protect their shins. The greaves were made of hammered bronze and had to be well adjusted to the hoplite's legs. They also had to be made thin so as not to weigh the soldier down. Since shin greaves were also expensive, many lower-class citizens opted not to buy them, instead purchasing armor that covered most vital parts of their body. Altogether, an entire set of armor was known as a panoply.
Looking good, Athenian. Wait, what? You can spar with the training dummies?
See, this is how you attack.
Has that always been a function of the games?
I don't know. I think this is just for the discovery thing, because, you can just go around, interact. See, these circles? Just stand on them and you'll maybe do an interaction or something.
There we go.
If a hoplite spear broke, or if he had to fight hand-to-hand, as was the case for the 300 Spartans in the final stages of the Battle of Thermopylae, he could always fall back on his sword. In the 4th century BCE, the most common sword had a thick, cruciform hilt with a blade that swelled near the tip. Hoplites carried their sword in a sheath under their left arm, enabling them to quickly seize their weapon with their right hand. Ancient Greeks had specific names to refer to different types of swords, but it's difficult for modern historians to match these names with their corresponding weapon. While xiphos was the standard name for swords in ancient Greek, words like machaira and kopis were also used.
Yep.
It's believed that the previous two words may have referred to recurved swords, while xiphos describes straight-bladed weapons.
I remember the Odyssey references the Caucasus. Oh, hey, you could do an interesting thing. More armor. Nice.
In the classical era, metal armor coexisted alongside leather corselets called linothoraxes. This is because procuring an actual set of bronze armor was beyond the means of many citizens, especially in poorer cities. Linothoraxes were also sometimes preferred in situations where hoplites had to be lighter and more mobile. The linothorax consisted of a linen breastplate that could be strengthened with shoulder pieces, bronze scales, or bronze-sheeted mantling. To protect the lower abdomen and the groin, 2 layers of terugs, or wings in ancient Greece, were attached to the bottom edge of the armor. Linen armor was one of the oldest types of armor in Greece. It even appeared in the Iliad, a story that is believed to have taken place long before the classical period.
So, discovery sites, it looks like. Ooh, you can look at the table.
I see. Yes.
Chessboard is coming along great. So we got a horse in the middle of the sea. Yep, right where a knight belongs.
This is awkward with no one standing here.
Like how they let you do the animation stuff. Dig in the dirt mound.
I don't feel like digging.
Why not?
I don't want to dig.
Let me guess. Digging.
Where is it?
Give us the deets, baby.
Fast travel. Probably less than 100 meters away.
What happened to Layla?
She's still in the Animus. Still in Atlantis, as far as I know.
She hasn't gotten out?
I don't think so.
You finished the game, didn't you?
Yeah.
At least the main story.
Yeah, modern day basically ended with Alexios giving her the staff.
Oh, wow. That wasn't even recent.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it feels like, yeah, that...
I like the way it is.
Welcome to Amphipolis, traveler. The Battle of Amphipolis was surely an interesting one. One might even call it anticlimactic. But that does not mean it wasn't important in the greater scheme of the Peloponnesian War. The city of Amphipolis was the site of one of the more unique battles of the Peloponnesian War. 2 generals, the Athenian Cleon and the Spartan Brasidas, fought for this land in an effort to control the resources it provided. In the end, though, neither got what they wanted. Look for me when you finish your visit, and we can speak of what you've learned.
So this is basically the battle that we fought in at the end of the game.
Yeah, with Cleon. Shoots what's your face in the back.
Yep.
The land that would come to be known as Amphipolis was originally part of Thrace, a region inhabited by formidable semi-nomadic horsemen. Thrace was rich in gold and silver mines. It was surrounded by lush forests, making it very attractive to outside parties like Greece and Persia. By 513 BCE, Persia had managed to conquer much of Thrace. But after their defeat in 479 BCE, Athens made a play for the land. They conquered the nearby island of Thasos in 465 BCE. But the military prowess of the Thracian riders kept them out of the country's interior. It was only in 436 BCE that Athens established a solid foothold in Thrace with the founding of Amphipolis, a city on the banks of the river Strymon. During the Peloponnesian War, the Spartan general Brasidas sought a way to subvert Athenian power across the Greek world. He set his sights on capturing the coast of Thrace, hoping to seize the resources the area provided. Brasidas knew that many of the Greeks living in Thrace hated the greed and brutality of their Athenian neighbors and decided to take advantage of the situation. He set off on an expedition to Amphipolis, accompanied by 1,000 hoplites and 700 helots, and arrived before the city in the winter of 424 BCE. At Amphipolis' ramparts, Brasidas announced that he preferred to take the city peacefully and promised to allow safe passage to any inhabitants who wished to leave, in addition to sparing those who wanted to cooperate. This proposal was well received by the city's residents, and he was able to capture Amphipolis without striking a single blow.
So that just revealed that the game takes place roughly maybe like over a 5-year period. Because we start in like 431 at the beginning of the war. And Brasidas came here in like what, 420 whatever. See, that's one thing about this game was they don't give you any dates. So you don't know exactly how long it's been since this last major event.
I suppose, but that also makes it more open world, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It makes it more open world because you can go off and do things in any order you want, but like when the plague hits Athens, it would have been nice just to have like a year of when that takes place.
Yeah.
Brasidas' march on Amphipolis blindsided the Athenians. By the time they heard the news and dispatched the general Thucydides to defend Amphipolis, Brasidas had already rallied several nearby cities to help him defend the region from Athens' so-called tyranny. After half a day's journey from Thasos, Thucydides arrived at the port of Aeon, but was unable to retake Amphipolis. Athens held Thucydides responsible for the loss of Amphipolis and forced the general into exile. In spite of Brasidas' achievements, Sparta did not send him reinforcements, which forced the general to negotiate a truce with Athens to hold on to the ground he gained. The matter of how to deal with Amphipolis divided Athens. The politician Nicias, as well as the city of Sparta, hoped that peace could be negotiated. However, the popular Athenian statesman and general Cleon wanted to continue fighting the war. Indecision continued until 422 BCE, when Cleon was elected as one of Athens' strategists. This decision made it clear that the city's people were in favor of war. The truce was ended, and Cleon began his journey to Amphipolis, retaking small towns that had been conquered by Brasidas along the way. On arriving at the port of Aeon, Cleon requested troops from the king of Macedonia. He also hired several Thracian mercenaries to bolster his force's numbers. Afterwards, all Cleon could do was wait for the remainder of his reinforcements. While they waited, the Athenian forces began to resent Cleon's hesitation to attack. They saw him as soft and incompetent, especially compared to their opponent, Brasidas. Sensing the tension, Cleon decided to act without waiting for reinforcements to arrive. He set out from the port of Aeon to observe Amphipolis, setting up a camp on a nearby hill. To Cleon's surprise, Amphipolis appeared to be completely unprotected, with no guards stationed at the city's gates and ramparts. However, the city's lack of protection was only an illusion. Even so, upon seeing this, Cleon regretted that he did not bring wooden towers, which would have allowed him to easily recapture the city. Brasidas positioned his own troops in a nearby wooded area to get a better view of Cleon's army. When the Athenians began moving to set up camp, Brasidas returned to Amphipolis. He believed his army was less well-trained than the Athenians and decided to rely instead on cunning tactics and Cleon's inexperience as a military leader. Brasidas organized a two-prong attack. He would personally lead a small raid, then one of his lieutenants would follow up with a second attack shortly after, disorienting the enemy. He had barely finished formulating his plan when he saw Cleon's army pack up and retreat back towards the coast. The cowardly display made Brasidas realize that perhaps victory would be easier than he thought. After seeing Brasidas' troops return to Amphipolis, Cleon decided to fall back to the port of Aeon and once again wait for reinforcements. Unfortunately, his exact orders were confusing and contradictory, which left the Athenian forces in disarray. Brasidas took advantage of this confusion and began his attack. Cleon's forces panicked, which made them easy prey for the Spartans. 600 Athenians were killed, while the Spartans only lost 7 men. Cleon's remaining forces took refuge in Aeon, where the bodies of their comrades were eventually returned to them, though only after being stripped of their weapons.
Dang.
Brasidas is just like, I'm gonna end this man's whole career.
During the pitched battle between the Spartans and the Athenians, both Brasidas and Cleon were killed. The reports of their respective deaths reflect how they were perceived as military leaders. We know almost nothing about Cleon's death, other than that he was killed by a Thracian soldier. Brasidas, meanwhile, survived long enough to be taken back to Amphipolis, where he was informed of his victory. He was buried inside the city, which was considered an honor bestowed only upon heroes, and was celebrated as the true founder of Amphipolis.
Nice.
There's a little icon in the bottom.
The Battle of Amphipolis temporarily put an end to the hostilities between Athens and Sparta. The Athenian forces returned to Piraeus, while Sparta called back the reinforcements they'd sent for Brasidas. The death of both Brasidas and Cleon encouraged the two cities to push for peace. The negotiations took time, but Sparta and Athens eventually agreed to return to the way things were before the Peloponnesian War. The resulting treaty became popularly known as the Peace of Nicias. Throughout the Greek world, it was mostly agreed that Sparta had lost the war, in spite of Brasidas' heroic efforts. The sentiment was rooted in the fact that Sparta had failed to end Athens' domination over Greece, something they had promised to do at the start of the war.
Didn't they occupy Athens for a long time?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Athens fell into Spartan hands for a while.
I see you're done with your tour. The Battle of Amphipolis may have briefly put an end to the Peloponnesian War, but the so-called Peace of Nicias was only temporary. it would not be long before Sparta and Athens came to blows once again. Now, is there something else you'd like to do? Feeling up to a test? Then let us begin. Which Athenian politician wanted to negotiate peace with Sparta? Correct. Nicias wanted to build on the truce that was negotiated after Brasidas captured Amphipolis. Now for the second question. Where did Thucydides and Cleon arrive before moving to retake Amphipolis? Yes, Ion is where both Thucydides and Cleon's forces arrived before trying to retake the city. I have one last question for you. Amphipolis was located in which region? Yes, Amphipolis was located in Thrace. It seems there's nothing I can ask that you cannot answer. Congratulations, traveler. Your eagerness for more knowledge is admirable. Follow me, traveler.
If you want to, yeah. Otherwise, you can just go there on your own and just look around and stuff. I'm only like halfway through these tours.
That's fine. You get to see your bros again.
Yeah, my bros.
As Sparta was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Was he talking about Tip?
No, I forget exactly.
Yo, you haven't been to Athens yet? Or is that Sparta?
That's Sparta.
Have you done all this?
I did one. The one with Leonidas.
Did you explore all that first place?
No, see? This is all I haven't discovered yet. Yeah, I have the map set where I hide all my completed ones. But I did complete Macedonia!
Alexander? Brasidas.
Nothing.
Horse? Dogs. Lots of dogs. That's a lot of dogs.
Good thing they don't attack you in discovery mode. Nothing attacks you. You cannot die. I have inside me blood of kings, literally. Waging war in the ocean was a brutal affair in ancient Greece. The ships, mostly triremes, were simply designed and unstable, especially in high seas and adverse weather. The development team looked at historical accounts of naval warfare from the period to recreate the drama and danger in game. Blue-clad Athenians have their ship cleaved in two in concept art by Hugo Puzioli. Those guys should be going overboard at that angle. Another one like right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right over here.
Dude, you didn't check something. Dogs.
Thucydides. Thucydides was an Athenian aristocrat, general, and historian who chronicled the history of the Peloponnesian War. While he does not mention his predecessor Herodotus directly, it is probable that Thucydides was influenced by the so-called father of history. Thucydides' account of history, however, focused less on the mythical origins of the Greeks, and instead provided a perspective on how much the Greek world had developed and evolved since its beginning. and how much it would continue to evolve into the future. His work also provided insight into the educational and cultural development of Athens. Thucydides was a skilled orator, trained by some of the best speakers of his time. Because of this, many of the most important moments in his historical writings are presented as speeches. Cool. Let's go over here then. Ancient Greek cities not only tolerated but protected public courtesans. It is said they officiated privately as much as they did in the temples of Corinth. Corinth? That cannot talk.
You know who conquered the Persian Empire?
Poof. That looks like Ares.
Kratos.
Messenia's history was linked closely with Sparta's. The region was long occupied by the Spartans. Its population was enslaved as Helots. Independent cities emerged only after the Theban invasion of the Peloponnese in the 4th century BCE. After the defeat of the Spartan army at the Battle of Leuctra in 371, the Helots of Messenia revolted against Sparta. Epaminondas, the Theban general, supported the buildings of the fortified city of Messene. The banner of Messenia is inspired by the coins of Messene, showing Zeus brandishing his thunderbolt. Zeus had an important sanctuary on Mount Ithome, which was included in the walls of Messene. Cool. What are you guys all looking at? Let me guess. Siege weapons. Yeah, war machines.
Yeah, like the superhero.
Several Greek authors have left us works on siege tactics or on how to build war machines. However, artillery such as catapults were not yet invented at the time of the Peloponnesian War. It would take another century for them to appear. The main war machines used at this time, called mechanae, were mostly scaling ladders, battering rams, and tortoises. There are 2 known instances of incendiary machines, but we don't know exactly how they worked. The Thebans used one against the Athenians at Delium in 424 BCE, and the Spartans at Torone in 423. No one knows how Greek fire is made, because it's been lost to time.
Well, you know it was a petroleum byproduct.
Yeah.
Exact recipe. It's made out of petroleum.
Charcoal. Charcoal is the solid residue that remains when wood or other organic matter is carbonized under controlled conditions in a closed space. Very little air is allowed to come into contact with the fuel during the carbonization process. If this condition is not observed, the wood or other raw material is simply reduced to ash and its fuel value is lost. This means that transport costs are much lower for locally produced charcoal than for locally gathered wood, an important consideration for a product whose production cost consists almost exclusively of the labor invested in it. It's also noteworthy that charcoal creates a much hotter, more even, and more easily controlled heat than wood, which means that it is much better suited for domestic cooking and grilling and a virtual sine qua non for blacksmithing and particularly ironworking.
Yes, sir.
Wood needed.
Heck yeah.
Wood cutting and charcoal making typically took place in the forest. Charcoals were then bagged and transported to private homes or presumably nearby markets. In wood-rich areas, local production of wood for common use appears to have been either in the hands of individuals or potentially middlemen who might collect wood from various sources, then resell it at the local agora. The elite's access to such wood may have been outside the market, if their landholding provided suitable material, except for the purchase of exotic materials. The full range of woodworking tools and techniques employed by woodworkers of the ancient Mediterranean and the practical knowledge concerning wood species and their most valuable applications attest to the importance of wood technologies for agriculture and hunting, domestic life, trade, warfare, and leisure activities. It is worth mentioning that the tools and the techniques employed by the end of the Classical and Roman period would show little change until the appearance of the Industrial Revolution 15 centuries later.
Heck yeah. If it ain't broke,
Don't fix
make
it.
it out of wood.
If it ain't broke, make it out of wood.
Gotta be some good Greek wood. Olive wood. Ash wood. Pine wood. Oak. What trees do they have in Greece? I don't even know.
Olive for sure, 'cause that's the only one we collect for the ship.
Messenia.
Welcome to Pylos, traveler. This area, along with the nearby island of Sphacteria, were important battlegrounds during the Peloponnesian War. I always find it a shame that such lovely-looking places were exposed to so much violence. It's difficult to take pleasure in relaxing on the sand, knowing how stained it is with blood. The Peloponnesian War was a great conflict between rivals Sparta and Athens. It lasted many years and cost a great number of lives on both sides. The battles of Pylos and Sphacteria occurred almost one after the other, and culminated with one of the most surprising outcomes in the entire war. But I will not spoil it for you. You'll have to experience it on your own. I'll wait for you at the end of the tour.
Okay, time to go back in our memories. What was the outcome of the battle?
You got knocked out.
Since 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War had been raging between Athens, Sparta, and their allies, with neither side gaining much ground. But in 425 BCE, an Athenian general named Demosthenes changed that. After a storm forced his fleet to stop in Pylos, Demosthenes realized a military presence in the area would give them an advantage against Sparta. Unfortunately, the fleet strategists did not believe him, and left Demosthenes in Pylos with 5 triremes and 1,000 men. The Spartans, meanwhile, were too busy celebrating a religious festival to notice the enemy on their doorstep.
That's not okay.
Isn't this the guy we've been collecting all the seals for?
Demosthenes?
I think so, because we keep getting parts of his armor when we complete it.
Then yes.
We've been needing to collect like
Once
12.
Sparta
and
discovered the Athenian presence on Pylos, the Spartan king Agis mustered his troops and fleet. Sparta then descended on Demosthenes' outpost, attacking from both the sea and the mainland. The Athenian general had to mount a hasty defense. He pulled his boats back to the foot of the ramparts and fixed them in place with stakes, providing extra cover. Then, going against all the established rules of battle, he descended with his hoplites to fight on the rocky shore, where he believed the Spartans would disembark. His gamble paid off, and the Spartans did indeed attempt to land at this location, though Demosthenes' forces made them hesitate. One of the Spartan leaders, Brasidas, decided to make the first move by ramming the rocks with his boat, exclaiming, "It's only a few planks." He paid for his actions when his shield slipped into the sea after descending from his boat, leaving him open to many blows. The battle raged on into the night and continued to the next day, remaining locked in a stalemate. However, on the evening of the second day, Athenian reinforcements arrived. The sudden arrival of the Athenian fleet stacked the odds in Athens' favor. The fleet decided to hold off their attack until the next day, when they swarmed the Spartan ships. They successfully captured 5 enemy ships and damaged many others, cutting off access to the nearby island of Sphacteria. Then, to add insult to injury, the Athenians raised a stake hung with weapons they'd captured from the Spartans, including the shield of Brasidas. Meanwhile, the 420 Spartans on Sphacteria were trapped, and Sparta was completely helpless to rescue them. With 420 of their men trapped on Sphacteria, Sparta needed to reevaluate their position. The Spartans on the island were essentially the Athenians' hostages, and Sparta could not move to rescue or resupply them without putting their lives in danger. In an effort to save the trapped soldiers, the Spartan leadership negotiated an immediate truce with the Athenian strategists. Sparta agreed to hold back its fleet and halt their attacks on Pylos, and in return, the Athenians permitted them to send supplies to their men. In the meantime, Sparta sent ambassadors to Athens to try and negotiate a better deal. The hasty truce greatly humiliated Sparta, as they were forced to recognize just how helpless their infantry was in the face of an Athenian fleet. To bargain for the safety of their men, Sparta sent ambassadors to Athens to propose a cessation of hostilities. The ambassadors tried to emphasize that their situation was not a result of strategic incompetence or lack of strength, but rather plain bad luck. According to them, the Spartans on Sphacteria did not deserve to suffer further, because they were trapped through no fault of their own. These statements provoked the ire of Cleon, a popular Athenian politician known for his populist speeches. Cleon insisted that the terms of negotiations be discussed openly before the assembly and the Athenian people, instead of in private. The Spartan ambassadors were not as comfortable with public speaking as the Athenians, so they decided to leave.
You guys,
Leon,
I'm going home.
concept art.
Following the failed attempts of the Spartan ambassadors, hostilities resumed. Back in Athens, Cleon took matters into his own hands. After being elected general, or strategos, he left to join the ongoing battle, accompanied by javelin-armed infantry and archers. With renewed strength and numbers, the Athenians landed on Sphacteria and engaged their enemy. The battle was hard fought, but they eventually managed to surround the remaining Spartans. It was then that Cleon invited the Spartans to surrender, as he hoped to return to Athens with prisoners. The Spartans were exhausted after spending 72 days on the island, so they accepted Cleon's offer and laid down their arms. A Spartan capitulation had previously been unheard of, and the news of their surrender echoed throughout Greece like thunder. The Spartans' capitulation completely changed the course of the Peloponnesian War. Athens used their new prisoners of war as leverage and threatened to execute them if Sparta ever returned to pillage their lands. This gave the Athenians the freedom to conduct their own raids, which were aided further by their eventual seizing of the island of Kythera. Sparta tried to negotiate for peace, but were unsuccessful. Cleon, meanwhile, was emboldened by his victory and continued to gain popularity with the Athenian people. Popularity that translated to power.
I hope you enjoyed learning about the battles of Pylos and Sphacteria. The battles were hard fought by both sides, but Athens' victory gave them an enormous boost in morale. It encouraged them to be more aggressive, and it was some time before Sparta recovered from the aftershocks of their historic surrender. Now, is there anything else you'd like to do? I'm happy to oblige. Let's begin. Where were Demosthenes and his fleet forced to land during a storm? Yes, Demosthenes landed at Pylos, where he was inspired to set up an outpost. On to the second question. Which famous Athenian argued with the peace-seeking Spartan ambassadors? Correct. Cleon demanded the terms of the peace be discussed in front of the Athenian assembly, which greatly dissuaded the ambassadors. One last question. Which Spartan general rammed Pylos with his ship? Correct. Brasidas ordered his ship to ram the rocks and lost his shield in the process. You've passed the test. Well done, traveler. I admire your desire for more knowledge. Follow me.
Where to now? Okay, so the game takes place in maybe 10 years. Completed Messenia. Hidemos II.
You're done with battle zone?
Somehow enjoys being on rocking boats as much as running on dry land. Spartan king helped reach agreement with Pericles to end the First Peloponnesian War.
What a guy. And the Second Peloponnesian War started.
The Olympic Games.
Big region.
Let's get started then.
One of them better be a statue of Zeus.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Brought to Greece by the Persians. Plague of Athens killed 1/3 of the population, with the largest epidemic in Greek history, most likely caused by typhus and smallpox. I put a spell on you. Temple of Hades, god of the underworld, was rarely honored. His temple in Elis opened just once a year, and only the priest could enter. It said this was because people could only go to Hades once. Unless you're Kratos. Cerberus. The 12th and final labor of Heracles was the capture of Cerberus, the three-headed hound protecting the entrance to the underworld. Heracles first visited Eleusis and participated in the Eleusinian mysteries to prepare himself for the descent. The entrance was believed to be in Cape Tenaron, at the far end of Laconia. Hades agreed to give Cerberus to Heracles, but only if he managed to subdue the hound without any weapons. Heracles was successful in this task. When Heracles brought Cerberus to Eurystheus begged him to return the beast to the underworld, then released Heracles from any future labors. Hey, I brought this hellhound to you. Ah, bring it back! Okay.
Burial and pollution.
Giving a proper funeral to the dead was considered one of the most important gestures in a person's life. It was believed that the soul left the body upon death, and if not properly buried, the soul wouldn't find peace in the underworld. Burial, therefore, had a spiritual purpose, but also a practical one in minimizing the festering of decaying bodies. This pollution of decay and the impiety of leaving the bodies without burial was the key explanation for the widespread practice of allowing defeated enemies to collect their dead after battle. That's nice. I don't know. I know. Alexia just starts saying, I don't know what I'm cheering for! Fish. Augean stables. The fifth labor of Heracles consisted of cleaning the stables of Augeas, king of Elis. This was a rather humiliating task, since the cattle that lived in the stables were immortal. Not only that, but they were more than 1,000 in number, and produced an enormous amount of dung. The stables had been filthy for 30 years, which made the task nearly impossible. In this case, Heracles used his brain instead of his brawn. Instead of this brawn. He redirected the rivers Alpheus in the Peloponnese and Pinios in Thessaly to the site. The water went through the stables and thoroughly cleaned them. Unlike the other laborers, it appears that Heracles was paid for the task. He asked for 1/10 of the cattle, if he managed to clean the stables in one day. However, he killed Augeas when the king didn't honor the deal and gave the kingdom to Phyleus, Augeas' son.
Okay. Demos. Big pig.
Hey, Pumbaa.
How are we doing, Pumbaa?
The fourth labor of Heracles was considered very dangerous. Eurystheus asked Heracles to bring to him the boar that lived on the mountain Erymantos. Centaurs, half horses and half men, renowned for being wise, lived on the same mountain. It was the famous centaur Chiron, who later became the tutor of Achilles, who advised Heracles on how to catch the boar. Heracles drove the boar into the snow, captured it, and carried it back to Eurystheus, who was so afraid of the animal that he hid himself into a pathos. Hey, I brought the boar back. Ah! Hey, Pumbaa, you stink. Oop. Time to climb a mountain. Here we go. Whee! Plop. What do we got here? Claudius. The Claudius River borders the western side of Olympia. Its name comes from the river god Cladios, who, according to Pausanias, shared an altar with Demeter behind the sanctuary's temple of Hera. Originally, Olympia's gymnasium and baths were erected along the river's banks, but part of the gymnasium was destroyed when the river changed course in the 4th century CE. The river's new trajectory, along with flooding from the Alpheus rivers in the Middle Ages, buried Olympia in approximately 4 meters of silt, and the site was only rediscovered in the 19th century. Wow. Up and away, up and away. I don't know if I ever discovered Mount Olympus. Icaros. Hey, Kronos. The site of Olympia is dominated on the northern side by the Hill of Kronos. This Titan, who was the father of Zeus and the Olympians, was worshipped on the top of the hill. Prophecies told that Kronos would be dethroned by one of his children. Because of this, he devoured the children he had with Rhea as soon as they were born. But when Zeus was born, Rhea fooled Kronos by hiding Zeus in Crete and replacing him with a stone wrapped in cloth. Once he had grown up, Zeus managed to free his brothers and sisters and make them his allies. The following war between Olympians and Titans for the supremacy of the universe is called the Titanomacy. Zeus also freed the Cyclopses, who created the Thunderbolt for him. Zeus and his allies won the war and imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus. The Titan Atlas received another punishment as he was ordered to hold up the sky. Zeus became king of the gods, and thus began the Age of the Olympians. Also, the stone Kronos 8 becomes the Omphalos stone. Slide. Come, Phobos. Doit.
You're doing great.
Get off.
Behind the scenes.
Hilltop forts formed the main line of defense against the invading armies. They are built of stone packed around wooden frames as demonstrated in the fort at the beginning of the page, created by Michael Guimont. It's up to the hero to infiltrate these and bring them down from the inside, allowing the army to advance, as shown in concept art by Caroline Susi. But these are not simple structures, as Benjamin Hall explains. Forts are some of the most complex challenges design-wise. These locations need to offer something different for the player from both a visual and gameplay point of view. Okay. Fort. Now let's just head on back. I'll get to those. Illness, pirate attacks, and shipwrecks all appear to have been valid reasons for arriving late to the Olympics. I can agree to that. And also being eaten by sharks. I can't believe he's gone. Unprecedented. Oh, I guess you're champion now. Wait, what?
Οι χαρακτήρες αυτές τραγωδίες προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας έλεγεν.
Hey, the Olympic torch. The modern concept of lighting the Olympic flame, a practice started during the 1936 Games in Berlin, has its roots in antiquity. The carrying of the torch was at least partially inspired by the Lampedodromia, a relay race that required runners to reach the finish line while holding a still-burning torch. However, although the Lampedodromia was held at many religious festivals and sporting events, it was not an event in the ancient Olympic Games. Instead, the most important flame in Olympia was the sacred fire of Hestia, which was used to light the sanctuary's altars during the festival. Cool. Hey, Artemis. Oiling up their body was very important for athletes, as they trained and competed completely naked. This process served to soften the muscles, offered skin protection against the sun, and helped to regulate body temperature to avoid dehydration. Athletes stripped and then covered their bodies first with oil and then with fine sand. The use of oil on the bodies of athletes may have also had an aesthetic purpose. For wrestlers, it was also a functional choice. When oiled bodies get covered in dust, it increases the grip on their opponents. Hey, discus!
Yeah, here you go. I got trying to do the long jump in the back.
That guy's practicing his javelin.
This dude over there, I don't know if he's like crying on the ground. Never mind. Doing some reps. Jumping squats. I love the boxing bags they got set up there too.
Oh, yeah. Through the door.